if you were to boil the thesis statement down for what this program is it's exactly that. How do you take a quantum leap in your ball striking so that the rest of the game doesn't matter as much? Is the simplest way to put it. Can you hit the ball well enough to consistently shoot a good score in the 70s day in and day out? Not saying you're not gonna have a blow up around here and there, whatever, but can you consistently shoot in the 70s by simply improving somebody's ball striking and doing it fast, right? Like people need to have a huge win up front to see that they can do it, because so much of this is confidence too. It's understanding your own ability and feeling and realizing like, okay, I really can do this.
That's motivating to have a quick win. It's that, I mean, those were not, I mean, here's where I am excited. And I think, you're sharing the same thing is the quick wins are possible.
Exactly. I mean, and you had a huge win, right? So actually I kind of want to get into your story. So you picked up, what was it, 30 yards with the driver in 15 minutes or something like that. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like I say, the thing about it was the distance I picked up, but for me, the height of the ball and the way it penetrated through the air instead of floating, that was actually as exciting as anything. It was like I finally compressed the ball is sort of what I had in my mind. And all, I'm gonna say, and the way I did this is like, I watched the video, went to the range, and I just said, I'm not going to think about anything in the video. Did a couple swings before practice, whatever, and I got a baseline, and then I just said, look, I really just need to be working on the throwing motion, the arm, and then for me, getting pulling it into the right pocket. You mentioned in there, and swinging from inside out. I mean, it just fixed some things that were plaguing me, and all of a sudden they start going through. And then, yesterday when I went out there, I couldn't figure out where the distance was because, like, I kept saying I can't see the ball land. And then I finally figured out that I was hitting them over the green on the back side. It was invigorating. I felt good about it.
What I needed to see or think about was, how do you take anybody along the spectrum and say, I'm going to not only help you understand how to really produce speed, real speed in the swing, not like, oh, I picked up 3 miles an hour. That's cool. I'm talking huge changes because they are achievable, as you've seen, but also fix swing mechanics, like fundamental, deeply flawed things in the swing, like over the top. Like most golfers are over the top, like something like 90-something%. And that's crazy because that is truly like the easiest thing in the world to fix. But for the average golfer, no idea how to really get past it. But how do you take the over-the-top golfer and give the under-the-plane snipe hook golfer the same information and fix both of them at the same time? Now, that doesn't make any sense on the surface because you're like, wait, there's two different problems, completely different skill sets. Yet that's exactly what I was trying to figure out how to do. And that's happened, like, right?
That's not, yeah, I see the challenge there. I mean, I mean, you don't want to have 100,000 different videos out there for each golfer. You never,
exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. And that's the challenge, right? So then you start, okay, I want to do the impossible. I want to fix two disparate problems with the exact same solution. That doesn't necessarily make sense on the surface. But when you take a step back and you abstract it a little bit further, you take a 30,000 foot view, what you realize is the person who's coming under the plane and the person who's over the plane still have the same problem. They don't understand really what they're trying to do in the swing. They don't understand the whole big picture of it. That's the thing. If there's one thing that's missing in the golf swing, it's this overarching movement pattern that is the golf swing. And when you think about it, every other sport kind of has a pattern that they can follow. If you're shooting a basketball, it's pretty simple. Like everything's kind of going all up in one direction. You're throwing a ball. It's pretty easy to understand that. But golf has this change of directions, like I talked about in the axiom stuff. But what's really missing is the glue to understand what is it that I'm really trying to do. And the priorities in the swing are, I need speed, because you can hit the ball really, really accurate, but if it only goes 5 yards, it's not really going to work, right? So you have to have speed. And that's something I think a lot of people are afraid of because they don't know how to produce it. The typical golfer goes out and tries to produce speed. They just hit the ball more offline. So what happens to most golfers, and especially golfers who kind of get stuck in that 6, 10, 15 handicap level, is they're like, okay, I have a bad swing. I got a bunch of swing flaws. I don't want to spend years trying to fix it. I just want to go out and have fun and hit the ball better. But I just have to tone it down and keep swinging within myself slower to the point that I can keep the ball in play. Because it's no fun if you just go out and lose 24 balls every single round. So how do you get them speed and accuracy at the same time? Right. So there's the other conundrum. So it's not just fixing two disparate swing faults that seemingly have nothing to do with each other, but then you're trying to solve two problems at once that also tend to contradict each other. If I give you more speed, well, you're just going to hit the ball further offline. Right. So how do I give you more speed and make you hit the ball more accurately? And I think you experienced that as well at first, right? That you not only saw an increase of distance, but you saw an increase in consistency, right?
Oh, absolutely. And then what you just described about just keep it in play and like, oh, I'm going to swing at, 70% just to, make sure I don't do this. And then, that creates its own problems. What you just described is, all right, the reason I'm, shooting roughly 80 is because I don't lose a lot of golf balls,
Right.
but I'm making a lot of bogeys too, because like, I've got a, 190-yard carry, which is no problem with a 5-wood or a 3-wood for me. I mean, I'm not going to, I don't even have a 4-iron anymore, but, um, many times I'll lay that up just because I don't have the confidence in like, hitting pitching wedge, and trying to make a bogey, which you don't do all the time. I mean, like it's frustrating. It's like I ought to just be able to walk up and say, look, if it's 200 yards, I mean, listen, that expectation is not very high.
No, it's not.
I mean, like if but I shouldn't be afraid of a 200-yard carry.
You hit the nail on the head. I mean, that's the thing, right? Like you can get to a certain point where you hit a wall because you have all these swing issues that if you try to pull out that shot, maybe you pull it off 1 out of 5 times. But the 4 times that you don't, you make a triple bogey, double bogey, and you blow up around. So you start throttling back. And there's a point where throttling back is valuable. But the thing is, if you're going to throttle back, you need to have so much horsepower in the tank that you're throttling back is still 120% of what you were doing before at 100%, but with way more accuracy. So when you're swinging at 80%, it needs to be 120% of what you were doing before without a sacrifice. And if anything, actually getting an increase in consistency and accuracy. And so you can see that this problem took a while to solve because
absolutely. And I mean, like I sort of imagine like during the, here's my perception of Rotary Swing is, you've got a great staff. Craig is amazing, by the way.
He is.
And you work on the creative side and maybe and let them run the business. I mean, you're working on how do I solve these problems, which is the hardest part. I mean, look, I love what Craig does, but I mean, solving 2 problems with 1 solution, I'm sure that keeps you up at night.
You have no idea. This is stuff that I've obsessed about for so long. And the reason why is just because I've been there. I mean, that's the simplest way. The reality, like I always look at when people ask me about running a business and being an entrepreneur, and I'm like, the reality is it's just really one thing. All an entrepreneur is somebody who solves other people's problems. And if you want to find a really, really good entrepreneur who's really successful, it's because he has that problem first, because now he's in bed with it. He's passionate about it because he's got to fix it himself for himself. And for me, that's where all of this stuff stemmed from is, I was one of those guys who was like, hey, I'm a good athlete. I should be able to hit the ball. Why can't I hit the ball farther? Why can't I hit it more consistent? Why do I have these up and down rounds and all the lessons don't work? Every training aid doesn't work. And so for me, that's just started me down this pathway over 2 decades ago of trying to solve the golf swing. And then when you look at it objectively, you start to realize that at first, if you just took 100 different golfers and you said, okay, in the next 30 minutes, I want you to help all 100 of these golfers hit the ball 20 yards further and more accurate. That's an impossible problem, I think, for anybody, because you've got 100 different golfers with probably 1,000 different variables each in their swings. And so now you've got an impossible problem that's infinitely huge. And so the time and resources and energy to solve that is impossible. It's just not realistic. And then you've got, all the marketing hype that's in the golf industry on top of, oh, use this ball, use this driver, use this training aid, whatever. None of that stuff makes a damn bit of difference, right? So that to me was like this really interesting puzzle piece that I'm like, I want to figure that out. How do I take 100 different golfers and in 10 minutes fundamentally fix them? Because I don't want to do Band-Aid stuff, as I'm sure you're well aware of. I'm very, very opposed to that. But at the same point, it doesn't have to be a lifelong process to get a huge win to where everybody can play better right away.
Guy in the PGA Tour, Herb Triplett, his uncle, Kurt Triplett. So uncle, Herb Triplett, was a great golfer, and he actually taught a lot of the ladies on the LPGA. And so he actually taught me. He says, "Hey, I'm taking on some students." He goes, I have one requirement, and this is 30 years ago. He goes, "You can't read any tips from Golf Magazine. You got to cancel your subscription to every golf publication you ever got, because tips don't work." It's the same type of thing. And like I say, I actually believe in Rotary Swing, it's a process. Say I feel very good about it. There's times where there's no improvement path that's linear. So that's the issue. But I think you're onto something. With the speed thing, and that's the thing that I've always missed is like, if I'm hitting 9-iron instead of 7-iron, eventually that's going to make a difference at some point in the score. Eventually.
100%. And this gets back to your question of how do you take that 6, 8, 9, 10, 15, 20 handicap or whatever and get them to that promised land without spending the next year putting, year chipping, grinding out 3-footers on, doing the compass drill around the putting green, whatever it is. That stuff, it's just monotonous. And I don't think that, at least it's not what I care about. And I think the average guy and gal is just looking to go out and have fun. I mean, it is a game, right? It's supposed to be fun.
Well, you're not looking for a job. And like I said, I actually am convinced, like I've got time now, I'm retired, and like, I could, but I really don't want to spend 10 hours a day at the golf course.
Yeah.
Thinking about, and with the only criteria of success is, did I accomplish this score today versus did I have fun, did I enjoy my buddies, type of thing. I mean, but it's, every golfer has what they want to get out of it, and that's the right answer for them.
Exactly. And for me, that's kind of been a mental shift for me, because when I started Rotary Swing, it was all about optimum performance, maximum performance of every single aspect of the game, having complete control over the ball, no matter what you did. And that is a job, right? It takes a lot of time to master all of those skills. What I wanted to see with this is exactly what you said. Somebody wants to go out and have a great time, a stress-free round, zero frustration or minimal frustration. Golf is always going to be hard. That's part of the allure of the game, is you're playing against the architect, the wind, the course conditions, all of that stuff. But when you're fighting against yourself on top of all these other outside battles, that's a losing battle. You can't tear yourself apart and then also try to play the golf course, because that's my goal, is for people to understand that golf, the first student that I worked with on this, Pedro, that I tested this on, I took him out, and he's never played with anybody at my level before. He just plays with his average guys, right? He shoots in the 80s, sometimes in the 90s, athletic guy, but hitting it 230 yards off the tee as, a fit 35-year-old, that's not really fun. He's hitting driver 3-wood into some of these par 4s that are longer par 4s today. And because the golf courses have gotten so long, it's just kind of beating the average guy up. So you got to keep moving up a set of tees. So now your ego is getting a little dent here and there. And golf is already so sufficient at destroying people's egos. It doesn't need any assistance from any outside sources, So I took him out there and just wanted him to understand and see this is how the game can be played. You can hit the ball like this and make it a no-brainer thing where you can walk out, hit every fairway, hit every green, walk out of there and be like, oh, this wasn't that hard, without decades of work or years and years of stress and strain. And that's where what I saw from him, to go from 230 yards to, he almost hit a 290-yard drive on the 18th hole. It was 287 on the 18th hole on
Wow.
a soft fairway with no wind, flat, and he had a perfect tight little draw. To him, the world had just changed. He saw that this is what the game can be like. And the feeling that he walked away with that day was not just hope and inspiration, but it was like, this is what I've always dreamed that golf could be like, right? If you could go out and hit the ball and he said this, like, if I could just hit one shot around, like you hit every single one, I'd be happy. And so for me, I'm like, wow, okay, that's all it's going to take to, I can get you way more than one. I can get you 20, 30, 40 shots around that are really, really fantastic without any real work. If you just want to get that shortcut with still having a fundamental solution that's going to set you up for long-term success. And that's where I kind of see how these two things fit together. This is about that quick win, fundamental fix, get off to the races, start having fun immediately, seeing real results. And then if you want to take that further step going down the road, the Rotary Swing program, where you dive more into the mechanics, the details, the physics, the anatomy, that's for that golfer. But for the bulk of people, they may not want to take that kind of commitment to it. They may not, I mean, the engineer type, the guys who really want to understand the swing, golf swing aficionados, Rotary Swing is a heaven for them. And that's why we have guys like you who've been around for 15 years, right? Because you can't get this information anywhere else. But you don't have to struggle and wander around. There's a way to make a quantum leap. And for me, the last 2 years really has been a time of reflecting on all of those things, all of the stuff I've done over the last 30 years, and saying, if you just told me, Chuck, I just need to focus on one thing and I'd get a huge win, both in accuracy and consistency and distance, what would it be? And I'm like, oh, I can give you that. That's pretty simple. And that's what this program was. And then it was just a matter of taking it, explaining it in a way that I felt was sequential, because I personally believe that sequence is very important when it comes to learning things. I think a lot of times people may have like the best information in the world, but if the sequence is off, the way that you're trying to go and put the pieces together, it just doesn't work. And it's not just a swing mechanic standpoint. There's a developmental process that happens in everybody that you kind of have to go through. And to get there faster, the sequence has to be perfect, because one little piece out of play in there throws you down a pathway that leads to things that you just unexpected results, right? And that's why I'm testing it with random people who replied on, Facebook or Instagram and said, hey, I don't know anything about you. I don't know anything about your swing. Take this idea and tell me what happens. Everybody has picked up, on average, I think the average is 20 to 25, I think 25 yards on average, not including Pedro, because he picked up almost 60, but that doesn't count because he worked with me in person. So I'm taking him out of the equation because that's cheating. That's not fair. I want this just solely doing it on your own. And that's always the trick, right? Like anybody can do a drill really well, right? Without hitting a ball. That was another huge part, is like, how do you get somebody to instantly be able to swing full speed with a driver on the course immediately and get the results? When you first saw the distance increase and the ball flight change, all those things, what was going through your head? I'm just kind of curious.
It was like, the first couple of is like, well, did I change a 7-iron into a 5-iron somehow? No, but like, my first mistake is, did I close the club face and cheat? Okay.
Sure.
So originally, did I cheat?
You
and
accused yourself of cheating. Okay.
And then, but it was like one of these things. Like I said, man, this is a lot more fun.
But what was the feeling when you walked off the range that day after that first session?
So it was like, I can't wait to send Chuck this stuff. And like, no, it really was. It's like, I walked off and like, I can't wait to come back. It feels like I accomplished something, on my own, without somebody standing over me. And then,
Yeah.
but I also felt like that was really cool. I was focusing on one thing. I actually felt pretty encouraged. Like, I can't wait to get back out there.
And that's where this kind of comes back full circle is, okay, Chuck, you've got one sentence to tell me what I really need to do in the swing, and then you never get to tell me anything else again. What is it? And this is it.
Right.
That's kind of how I thought about this from a top level way of saying, let's just cut to brass tacks. Let's just cut through all the BS. And what do you really, really need to do to get 95% of where you need to be? And that last 5% we can work on over time.